Welcome back to Nation Builders Church International. I want you to understand those words very, very clearly. Again and again. Nation Builders Church International. The title of the message today is Absolute Truth Matters. And Evidence. Evidence is the title of the message today. Evidence is going to destroy the government, bring down the government, develop the economies, uplift the downtrodden, and build nations. When you look at the world today, my friend, we have two parts of the world today. One is the very educated, scientific, societies that are there, established and evidence-based, that are called developed countries, whose economies basically dictate what actually happens anywhere. They fund projects, they loan money, they have bigger budgets for wars, and they are mighty powers globally. But there is another side of the story where there are, poor nations, weak nations, underdeveloped countries, or the developing countries, who basically have no clue about the power of evidence. You see, now India will be getting into polls shortly in 2027, I believe. And same thing again is going to be repeated. Unlike many of the developed countries where the debates are on economy, healthcare, and overall human development, technology, innovation, etc., these developing countries like India is going to be fighting the battle of elections based on the caste again, based on the religion again, based on these more sentimental issues that do no good for the society. When I look at our Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, I feel sad for the country of 1.4 billion people. 1.4 billion people, lives matters. When I look at him, I say, how in the world do we have a Prime Minister of that kind, who don't have language skills, who cannot even speak English, and who avoids press conferences? I said 60% population here are young people who are going to universities, studying science and technology, chemistry, botany, zoology, and many of those kind of things. And what kind of leader have we been able to produce, and have we been able to elect, my friend? These are the times that we need to ask hard questions. At least as we get to the next elections in India, like vice versa into many other countries, as I'm addressing these developing countries that are there in African subcontinent, in Asia, these are called the poorest nations, who do not ask for any evidence, my friend. That is what is basically keeping these nations, poor, underdeveloped, and misguided. Their energies, the youth force is misguided. You see, because nobody questions the evidence in these nations. Nobody talks about scientific fever. Nobody asks about historical, archaeological, linguistic evidence for anything that is presented. Therefore, these nations are bound under, superstition, lies, and sentiment that keeps these people poor. For example, let's take India. There were so many evil practices that had been present in this subcontinent, and that have been, legally abolished, in the process of time since the British had come to India. There are still some of these, these beliefs that are there. For example, Vastu. We need to ask ourselves, is this scientifically verified? Is there any evidence for it? Why aren't these skyscrapers that are built in other countries don't even look at the Vastu Shastra, but they still dominate the world? You understand? It's a simple question of asking, demanding, while promoting the Vastu Shastra, or Jyotish Shastra, astronomy, astrology. You see, somebody need to be asking them, and saying, hey, do you actually have evidence for this? That you are out here deceiving billions of people to follow something where when other countries don't even take a note of that. Example, caste system. Is there a caste system in other parts of the world? Is there that hierarchical structure? Then when it doesn't affect their economies, why is it only affecting here? Is there a scientific basis for this? What is the origin of caste system in India? Is this a good practice or an evil practice? Somebody need to be asking for the scientific evidence behind all of this, my friend. Because as we are now getting ready into the election season, now the political parties will be now already in strategizing for their elections based on their caste and religions. In India, therefore, India is continually going to be there, at the same spot when China moves forward and when America moves forward, when all other countries are moving forward, because nobody here in India is demanding for evidence for anything that is advocated here. You understand how the evidence is going to destroy governments that are illegally formed in the countries, my friend. You understand that? Elections fought on the basis of religion. Elections fought on the basis of caste. Elections fought on the basis of social stigma instead of economy, instead of development, instead of education, healthcare that are mandatory for any country, my friend. This is the time educated people across the world to raise the voice and say, hey, I ask for the evidence for anything that you're saying, my friend. That one question is going to destroy every lie any politician could ever invent and go for elections, my friend. You got to be evidence-based for anything that you're advocating, my friend. You need to understand this. For example, now in India, situation is that as we get ready for the elections, there are very famous concepts that are there, that people trying to push the Hindutva agenda one side, another side, people trying to protect the secular fabric of India. My friends, do we even ask for evidence? You understand? Is somebody asking for the history of India and Hindutva? Is somebody asking for the roots of Hindutva? Where did this concept originated? And trying to put that on the historic perspective. You see that? When you put the timeline of India as a nation, who are the first settlers? How did India even existed? When you ask those questions, my friends, a lot of truths would begin to emerge. You understand? The origin of India. Who are the first settlers? I'm like, I've been told there were some DNA reports that were done. Understand? Science is answering a lot of questions here. Science is destroying a lot of myths here. Science is leading the way for development. Science is destroying a lot of kingdoms here. You got to understand, the youth need to ask questions. The youth need to ask. The youth need to demand for evidence, my friend. You understand that? You see, some 60,000 years ago, the first settlers from Africa had arrived in India. You understand? India is consisting of at least some 3 people groups that have been living here some 9,000 years ago. People from Ukraine, Russia part of the world came here. And some 2,000 years ago, some others had come here as a herdsman. You see, 3 different kinds of people who began to exist here. The South Indians who've been the first settlers. You see, the blood mix, the DNA sample. You see, in spite of all of this, you see, where did the Hinduism had come into India? When did the Buddhism had come into India? Why did even Buddhism even originated from India? And what were the wars that were fought between these 2 communities who actually dominated the country of India? Why did Ashoka turn from Hinduism and became a Buddhist? Understand? And where did this, the caste system originated? You understand? And what was the dominant force? How did Hinduism absorb the local deities into megafold? There were a lot of things that need to be asked, my friend. You see, when you dismantle, when you put everything on the timeline, when you dig for the evidence, many questions will be answered. You understand that? The Indus Valley civilization that existed before anybody else here. And the Indus Valley civilization that disappeared after some time due to some natural, calamities, etc. They say. You see, there's a lot of story behind India. India is not just Hindutva or secularism. There were Buddhists that were, living in India. And from India, a lot of Buddhists were going out preaching their Buddhism into Southeast Asian countries. So you got to get to the root of the problems. You understand? You got to ask for evidence. You got to ask for evidence, my friend. Is there any evidence for the deities that exist in India? You understand? When you ask and demand for the evidence, my friend, you see, that's where the truth surfaces. And it is the truth that would set the nations free. It is the truth that will liberate people. It is the truth, my friend, that will expose every false notion that is being binding people. We got to ask these hard questions, my friend. If we need to become the most developed country, if we need to see that our people would start developing, research laboratories to go to, Mars and colonize Mars and explore the universe that is there, we got to start asking the right questions and not be manipulated by the politicians, not be manipulated by the short-term thinkers. Understand that? We got to demand for evidence. Demand for evidence. Every educated person living any part of the world, it is time to demand for evidence, my friend. That is when the nations will be built on the foundation of the truth. And that truth is going to develop countries. You understand? There is an absolute truth that Bible declares, my friend. It is not relative. You can have your truth and then every truth can be truth. No. That concept is very foreign to the Bible. Understand? There is absolute truth that exists. Absolute truth that exists. Whether Buddha existed or did not exist, there is an absolute truth that he existed. Ashoka, absolute truth. Did he ever existed? Can you even verify that? There is an absolute truth that Bible continually supports. My friend, that absolute truth is going to liberate countries. That absolute truth is going to set the countries free and release the human potential to build greatest nations. The title of the message today, it is time to demand for evidence. Amen. Thank you so much for your time. I wish and pray that you will continue to ask for evidence. Amen. Thank you so much. Thank you.